7:30, and we're going to get started tonight. I appreciate everybody that's joining us tonight. Depending on where you live, there was a nice snowstorm here in the Northeast. Yesterday it was 65 degrees. So I'm not sure what you think about global warming or weather, climate change, but yesterday was 65, and today we've got maybe, I don't know, 4 or 5 inches down by the shore, and some of my friends have as much as 8, 10 inches of snow. So I'm here tonight with Captain Frank Wagenhofer and Jason Little. Both of them are my teammates on the Fin Chaser team. Captain Frank is a charter boat captain, and Jason is our head mate, lead rigger. He's the guy that gets a lot of the work done while we're driving the boat. I'm going to start off the presentation. We're going to really concentrate tonight just mainly on Mojos and Mojo fishing. Hopefully we can give you guys some tips or some guidance to get started. Not saying that we know everything, but you know, we've had a lot of experience in the last few years using the Mojos and the Mojo system. So just a little background about Mojos and how I got involved with it. About 15 years ago, we fished a ASA tournament trail, and a friend of mine had a local captain join our team, and he came onto our boat with 12 heavy-duty rods with reels up to 50s, international 50s, and he had a giant tackle box filled with these Mojos, all different varieties. And since being up, you know, in the north, mostly fishing off in New Jersey and in New York, where we're fishing, you know, depths, you know, at up to 60, 70 feet. But off of Virginia, we were fishing in up to 150 feet. So I was watching how this person was setting up the boat and was able to utilize all these rods, and it was really an interesting way of fishing. And after that, I pretty much let it go until a few years ago, where we started using Mojo rigs in our spreads to give us a little more variety. Mainly when we're fishing for very large fish, especially during tournaments, we like to fish spoons and bunker spoons. And I've done presentations, and I'll probably do one this spring on fishing spoons. But we only were able to fish 2 rods at a time. And we were hoping to be able to, we tried trolling plugs, we tried trolling a variety of lures with the spoons, but it was very difficult. We get a lot of snags. And if we caught a fish, they would wrap a lot of times around our wire. So we started using Mojo rigs, and the Mojo rigs really enabled us to fish an extra two rods in our spread. So we're going to talk a little bit about different items like rigging. We're going to talk about some of our secrets that we use, different types of Mojos. But really a Mojo is just a giant, well, a large bucktail. And they're different styles. They weigh anywhere from even an ounce, 2 ounces, up to 64 ounces. And unlike the regular bucktails that you're familiar with, the hairs of the Mojo is tied backwards, reverse, pretty much like some of your offshore parachute heads. And what it does is it increases the profile, makes it look like a large bunker. And also we've been experimenting with variations of squid skirts as well, and we're going to show you a couple of different examples. You know, the Mojos are typically fished with a shad body as well to give it even a larger profile. When we're going after large bass in tournaments and stuff, we're really looking to have large profiles. A typical large bunker in the Northeast could be well over a pound. So we're trying to mimic the bait fish that's in the area. And also rigging large gap single hooks. And we're going to do a little demo tonight on how we rig our shared bodies and how we also a standard Mojo rig. Now, depending on where you're fishing and also what area, colors would come in play, as well as weights of bucktails, you know, your Mojo rigs, and also the profile of the Mojo. If you're fishing and the bait is a lot smaller, you know, you're gonna have to scale down to those sizes so that you're mimicking what's in the area. So here's your typical Mojo rigs. On the left of the screen, you're going to see a variety of head shapes. You got ball heads. You got heads that are elongated. You've got smiling bills. Pretty much every bucktail head that's out there, people have made into a Mojo rig. Here you'll also see a variety of shared bodies that are also included onto these rigs. And again, large 10-aught, heavy-duty 4X hooks are recommended. And onto the right of the screen is a typical Mojo rig that we use. Again, shared bodies, 9-inch or even larger. We've been experimenting with the squid skirts on ours. We've been experimenting with different color heads. But here's a typical rig that we use on our boat when we're tournament fishing, as well as our charters. So I created a diagram to kind of give you guys just a simple schematics of what our rig looks like. Now, one of the great things is if you don't have to write notes down or anything. This presentation is being recorded so that you could always go back, and I'll give you the web address that you could find it, and then you could go back and get some of your reference material back. But right now, we're running a master braid to a 3-way swivel, and we like to use a 2-aught. When we're really not shy, we're not putting light leaders. Everything here is large because we're fishing for large fish. And when we're targeting those large fish, then if they're hungry, they're not going to be that finicky. So your main line is going to be attached to one of the 3-way swivels. Then we put a 5-foot, 120-pound mono. And the reason we use the heavy mono is because the abrasion factor of it. A lot of times we're fishing areas that have a lot of structure. It could be rock piles. It could be reefs. It could be anything snags that are on the ocean bottom. And we're going to actually show you some of our favorite areas that we target. Now, this is the dropper, and this is the main. So the photo reimposed. So this will be your main, which will be the heavy line, and this will be your top line. So it'll be just opposite, okay? And then on the top line, because you have the longer distance, you could put, we like to top it off with spoons or plugs, darters, things like that. And we're gonna show you some different ways of doing it. Now, why should you use a Mojo? And one of the reasons we like it is you can fish multiple rigs without tangling. And they're very easy to, you know, to keep organized on the boat. So if we're trolling just Mojos without spoons, we could troll up to 4 to 6 rods in different areas and not have a problem with tangling. And again, having the heavier weights allows the lure to be fished in controlled depths. Some of the lines that we use are color-coded so that we know the depths that we're fishing. Because it's heavy and it's close to the boat, a lot of times with your better sonar machines, you're able to see exactly where you're fishing. So we're going to talk a little bit with Captain Frank tonight. who's right here, one of our guests. And Captain Frank has been charter fishing for how long, Frank?
Excess of 18 years chartering.
Okay. And how many years have you been fishing tournaments?
Tournaments, probably several years before that, at least 20 years overall.
Okay. So how long have you been fishing with Mojo rigs?
Around the same time that you started, about 15 years ago. It was first introduced from Chesapeake. Extremely popular there. And then now, just recently, it's taken off here, even though it's something we kind of put aside for a while. But they always produce then, they still produce now. But now the physical mechanics of it and how we're breaking it down and different things we're doing with different weights, other trolling spoons or daughter plugs behind it in lieu of just another weighted shad. It allows us a lot more versatility. Taking the heavier weights and taking the same exact Mojo, one with a 36-ounce weight versus one with a 12, drop them out the same amount of line. One's going to scope a lot further than the other. So now you can actually run on one side of the boat, right out of the same gunnels. You can run one that's heavier, which will be right down behind the motors. Then we can lighten up the second one, which will scope out a lot further. So you can technically almost run two rods on each side in tandem, one behind the other, and then still put your spoons out left and right. And you have no tangles. You can still, on top of it, run seventh rod right down the middle, with an even heavier or lighter Mojo, as long as it's not going to sweep with the spoons.
Okay, great. Now, what are like some of your favorite colors that that you'd like to have in your spread? Like, what if our viewers went out to the store today and they had to pick a couple of colors? What are the go-tos?
So going back to the basics, on the Chesapeake, it's either shark and white or white and shark. That's really it. Up here, you can mix it up with some more flash, some with more pearl. I'm not saying that, red is a go-to or bunker color is a go-to.
Okay.
But when you have the holographic on here, I don't know if it's transferring well, that flash is always nice. Big white shad body on it with a white skirt. That's a white setup.
Okay.
And then, let me see that spoon. One of the top trailers we do on that 15-foot piece is we'll use a weightless spoon. And you can see there's no weight on it, there's no keel. Double hooked, it'll be white, and then this is a gold color or bunker color. This is just one of the things that you can put on there in lieu of a second shad, which would be on your trailer. You could even go completely, one of those weightless. You can actually go completely weightless, basically just putting a 10-0 hook with a shad body on it. Because you have that 5-foot Mojo down there, and this one here is traveling behind it, and it doesn't need the weight to keep it down. You don't need two pieces of two lead heads to achieve a depth or scoping distance behind the boat.
Okay, so how do you decide what weights you want to use when you're trolling? So it's early morning, you're getting out there, it's first light.
Yeah, you just have to figure, we usually like to troll parallel to either the structure of the shoreline, so you can stay in that depth for a longer period of time. And basically, the shallower it is, 25 feet, you go with your lighter weights. You may go a little heavier, like I said, to get those additional rods in the water, this way they don't find each other. One's going to be directly behind the boat, and the other one will be back, further. And that's in tight. But if you even go out to the deeper water, that's where those giant heads come in. You're doing the same exact thing, but your far back line is not 12 ounces now. Now it's 36 ounces. And your close line isn't 36 ounces anymore. It's 60 ounces. You're doing the same thing with much deeper water.
Right, because earlier today I got an email from a person who's going to attend this webinar tonight, and he was saying, "Hey, I fish really shallow water, 20 feet or less. Can you do that with Mojos? And if so, what would be your combination that you would use?"
Yeah, you absolutely can do it with Mojos. I would just use a lighter presentation. Again, back to that 12 ounce and 24 ounce. Spoons in that depth work as well, but you have to stay on top of them. And the other key thing that Captain Anthony did zero in on is with Mojos, you're not dealing with wiring, you're dealing with weight. It's very easy to readjust your depth. You can pull lines in and out. There's no fatigue on you. You can set them up with a 4.0 reel or even a 6.0 reel. You really, don't want to work too hard. There's a lot more advantages than just wire alone. I mean, wire produces, but it's a little bit more cumbersome to deal with on a daily basis.
Okay, so usually when we're on a tournament and the three of us are out fishing, I drive the boat, and Frank and Jason are usually the ones that run the cockpit. So one of the main things that they're always looking at is the action of the Mojo. And they're constantly asking me to readjust. And it could be because we're going up sea or down sea. They're very particular about trolling speeds. And when you find that sweet spot is when you'll get the hits. So give me an example of the speeds that you want to see when I'm driving the boat.
Well, we usually always start, the starting point is pretty much 3 knots, up sea or down sea. You deploy everything, you watch how it's moving, how the tips are, how close it's staying to the bottom, and you'll make your adjustments, a half a knot either way. And when you turn the boat around, sometimes they only hit in one direction. Sometimes they hit both directions. But you'll have to also know that you were going down sea versus up sea, and you have to adjust accordingly to get the same action. Don't be hung up on the speed. The speed is just an indicator. Once you find the right action, you readjust in that direction and you match that speed in that direction. And then when you go in the other direction, it's the same thing. You find out where the sweet spot is with the action, and then you will maintain that speed in that direction to maintain the action on the rod tip.
So all day long, we're constantly adjusting our speeds depending on, the wave heights, or the current, many different variables. And again, you're constantly, if you think you're just going to put them out, go at 3.5 knots. You may not get as many fish as the people that are taking notes. Like we noticed coming down sea in this one area, we were catching bigger fish. Another one time we had to make an adjustment. We started going, I was going a little bit too fast, and we kept on getting bluefish, and this was a striper tournament. We were constantly having to re-rig. So we had to make changes. Frank, another thing I wanted to talk about today was, places you like to fish. Now, I know I put a couple of charts up, some of my Navionics. Actually, I took them right off the web app, and I took some screenshots of 3 major areas that in our area you like to fish. But give me an idea on how you like to fish different depth contours. So what I'm asking you is, like, what are you looking for on a chart?
Okay. With respect to that, it depends on the time of year and whether you're fishing migratory fish that are coming up. They're only going to be here for a few days, and they're just going to pass down the ocean side. They're just going to pass through. And then you'll go to areas, I don't want to spot burn or anything, but say you talk about the Shrewsbury Rocks. Tons of structure there, tons. And what will happen is they'll actually hang out there longer, especially if there's present. I mean, stripers are also called rockfish. They love structure. That's that's where they're going to be. And then in the summertime, or once they do their migration up, they're going to sit there and they're going to become more or less residential or resident for those areas. They're not going to leave them. They'll always hold fish wherever the structure is. Now, getting back to the contours, if we're fishing for fish that are just coming up, we'll start off at the shallower because it's easier, and then work our way deeper until we find them, or we find bigger fish. They'll be less frequent, but the deeper it is, usually you produce bigger fish. Or if it's a little bit later and they've already pushed up a large body of fish, then we'll go directly to the structure. We'll go to the rocks. We'll go fish those contours of the rocks. Come up, start on the shallow side, working to the deeper side of it. Which again is a fantastic thing with the Mojos because you're not dealing with those spoons. You'll snag, and once you snag with a spoon, and you break that any length of that 300 foot of wire, that reel is done. You're done fishing that technique unless you have a backup reel. But these Mojos, all you do is, you probably have, 500-600 foot of blade on there easily, or yards rather. And you just cut your line, you retie your standing line to the freeway, and you're back in business again. And it wasn't a big investment. So when you're in those areas where you have a lot of structure and you're going to lose a lot of gear, it's a cheap, highly productive way to get through it.
Yeah, one of the things I like, and because being a fly fisherman like tackle fishing, is, because wire line fishing just produces large fish. It's an effective way to cover a lot of area, and I just think that what's great about the Mojos is you can be tight to the boat. You know, you're not going to scare these fish 30, 40 feet deep. So you have lines that are right tight to the boat, then you have a few that are a little further, but you're not bringing in 300 feet of wire, you know. So that's one reason why. And also because we fish this type of structure is that you'll always have one or two people in the cockpit so that they're always watching the rods. And I'm always calling out the depths. If we're 40 feet, if we make a quick depth change to 35 or 22 in some areas, I got to tell them immediately so that they could readjust, readjust the rigs. If not, we're going to lose more and more plug. So, and it also takes up time away from when we're fishing a tournament. So, as we were talking about with Frank, right now I put up a it's web app chart of Sandy Hook, and there's a couple of different areas that we like to fish, and this could be anywhere USA. Some of these areas you could find off of Cape May in Virginia. You could find this off of Long Island. There's all these areas that you find have deep water channels, structure next to them, contours, some shoals and areas that that show these areas. And one of the great things about the Navionics sonar charts is that they show 1 foot contour details, which is awesome for us, because prior to looking at those old plastic charts, you never saw so much detail. And because it's ever changing, one of the great things is having the live updates, being able to update our charts daily, and being able to community share with them enables us to get the freshest data in those areas. And that's a Navionics plug. It's a great idea to use these Navionics charts, and one of the reasons is because we get the freshest data. So using these moving water rips, here's Sandy Hook. It's one of very popular area, and we like to fish some of these rips that are created by false hook, and also off the hook of and the channel, deep water channels. Between large channels, a lot of times fish are moving from channel to channel. A lot of these areas will hold bait. You know, we'll come through here and there'll be just acres and acres of large menhaden just hanging out in this 15 to 25, 30 foot depths, 40 feet deep, and as deep as 65 feet. So a lot of times we like to fish this type of area. Another place that we'll fish in the spring, as well as this year, the fall was very good. In the spring, a lot of times the larger fish that are migrating into different estuaries to breed, these are usually good areas to fish. Shoals, shallow water where the water temperatures warm up early, and therefore a lot of the crustaceans, worms, and it starts to come alive. Crabs, even some fish that are starting to appear. And these are really good spring areas. Again, we like to try to fish in continuous contours, areas that have drop-offs. Here, the round shoal. And again, we're not really spot burning because these have been historical great places to fish. Again, Frank talked about and mentioned earlier a go-to spot for any fisherman who's fishing from the Barnegat Inlet north and as far as eastern Long Island. I've seen some of the party boats come down to this area called the Shrewsbury Rocks, and you can see why. It's a wall of rocks that probably extend a mile to the 3 mile limit, and there's a lot of structure here. And with a lot of structure, you get bait. And with the bait, you get the forage fish, the predators. And this is a go-to in the fall. There could be, on a nice day, fish are biting. There could be hundreds of boats in here, and they're all trolling. So one of the benefits of having the Mojos, having them close to your boat, not having them out 100 yards out behind you, enables you to maneuver in between a lot of the boats. Once you start marking fish, you could stay on those fish. So
another important aspect is, it wasn't mentioned, track line. Always have your machine dropping the track line, because when you hit your fish in the direction that you hit your fish, it's important to be able to repeat that almost exactly within several feet of where the boat originally was. And that is because they're hanging on that little piece, or that little edge, or whatever that detail is that's holding them there. Which means if you're, 10 yards to the left, 2 yards to the left or right, you're not going to produce as well. So you always have your track lines running on your machine. You hit man overboard and you get your X every time you pick up a fish, and then you're going to set up a pattern on your machine between the track line and the X's for every fish you pick up. And then you just keep repeating it and grinding it out over that area, and you'll have a very successful track.
right, and also gives us a reference of what we did during the day. And then when we're pre-fishing tournaments, and I'm going to do a webinar with Frank and Jason in April on our tournament tactics, and one of them is keeping a journal. It's crucial to daily log, what we're doing, where we're fishing, where our waypoints are. We mark every fish that we catch. And then sometimes if we get a little lull in between, I'll go back and I'll mark the size fish. If we're in an area and we're catching 25, 26-pound fish, hey, that's great if we had a charter. But some of these tournaments in New Jersey require fish 30, 40, 50, up to 50 pounds. And sometimes you've got to move from smaller fish to find bigger fish. And we try to constantly mark our charts. And like Frank said, we definitely use the, the lines to repeat different trolling patterns. So again, the Shrewsbury rocks. And again, any of these type of structures, rock piles, fish obstructions, anywhere where you could see a lot of contour change, you're going to be able to catch striped bass. So now we're with Jason, and he's been off to my right here, and we're going to get him into the view. And Jason has come aboard the Fin Chaser team in the pit. Come a little closer to me, I will fight. And he's been on the Fin Chaser team now a couple of years, and he's been crucial in some of our tournament wins. So, Jason, Mojo combinations. Why don't you show the viewers a couple of different combos that you like? I know Frank showed the spoon.
Darter.
We'll do some different combos with this. We'll use wood darters. We use different sized Mojo heads. Like Frank said before, we run a bunch of combinations. A bunch of combinations with it. We'll run, if we're in deep water, we'll run a 260 ounce behind the boat with a 24 ounce trailer, but we'll run an 8 and a 12. We'll run that back 120, 150 yards behind the boat, and it will not get to the bottom. When you're out in that deeper water, you definitely need to have your Mojos to get down. An important aspect of that as well is the braid cuts through the water a lot better than monofilament. So when you're out in that deeper water, you want to try to use the braid to cut through the water and to get down quicker.
Yeah, now also, Jason, I wanted to talk a little bit because we haven't touched upon, since we've been using Cortland braid, which our entire team, Captain Frank Crescitelli and all of the Fin Chaser boats, the tournament boats, we've been using Cortland braid on all our rods that use braid. And a couple of reasons I always like to tell people. One, no wind knots. Very few wind knots, especially if we're spin fishing. But two, it's abrasion proof. It's the way that it's created. They have this machine and it's got like 12 fingers and it's braiding this line. If you ever go to some of the trade shows, please stop by the Cortland booth and watch how they create braided line. But we like to use, and I was talking about it before, between 50 and 65 pound braid on our rods and reels. And the beauty of it is that if we're not fishing Mojos, we could use the same rods to fish other species as well. Now, Jason, what type of rod do you like to use when we're tournament fishing?
I really like using the Saltus 30 2-speed. Reasoning for that is when you're tournament fishing, you want to crank it in. You want to get the fish in as quick as possible. You want to have your lines back out. You're never going to be able to win a tournament with one fish. You want to get it in as quickly as possible.
Right, because yeah, sometimes the bites only last a half hour, 10 minutes, who knows? And being able to bring those fish in quickly enables us, A, to get the fish in quicker, but also if we're returning the fish back, that we're getting them back and we're not fighting them for a long period of time. So the 30, but as Frank mentioned, most 4/0 and 5/0 reels would
retrieve rate is awful, but at the same time, you get the job done for a great price.
Right. So if you don't want to shell out the money for the Daiwa, Saltiga, you know, there's many other reel companies that you could use. But the retrieval rate is key. Having that speed, the second speed for the retrieval ratio is very good. Now, what about a rod? What are you looking for in a Mojo rod?
Well, you're going to want to use a stiffer rod on the Mojo rod. We've matched it up with the Saltiga jigging rod, and we've had very good luck with it. We've been matching the reel up with the rod, and we've had very good luck with it.
Okay, and having the stiffer rod, fast action rod, what are you looking for, like the tip? What should the tip be doing when we're trolling? So like when you're telling me or yelling at me, not telling me, yelling at me, slow the boat down, speed the boat up. What's that tip got to be doing to attract fish?
You want a slight bend in the tip. You're going to know if you're going too fast or too slow. You're going to have a slight bend in the tip of it. If you're going from 50 feet down to 30, you're going to know it's going to be bouncing. You know, your Mojo is going to bounce. If you're going too slow, you're not going to have enough bend in the rod. You just want that happy bend in the rod.
Okay. So Jason is also one of our lead riggers for when we're creating these rigs for our tournaments. We're preparing now. We've been crimping. The other night, I think, what did we do? About 100 rigs we create and store, because when it's fishing time, we're not spending time rigging. So this is one of the rigs Jason will show you that we like to use. Now, we talked about the 5-foot on the bottom and the 15-foot on the top.
So what we do with these, a lot of the Mojo companies out there, what we do with ours is a little different than a lot of Mojo companies out there. Most of the Mojos they send you, they're crimped right to the Mojo. But when you're tournament fishing, you're not going to have time to, you don't have time to change a complete rig out. What we're doing is we use a heavy-duty snap, which is a 150 snap.
Probably.
A 150 snap or equal in speed clips. Usually when we're out there, we have this head set up around the bucket. And when we're going from deep water or shallow water to deep, vice versa, we have two guys in the back of the boat and we're switching out our heads. Because you're not going to use the same heads in different depths of water. And when they're crimped, you just don't have time to change them out. And you don't have time to wrap them up.
All right, so this rig, we have the 2/0 3-ring that we were showing before, and then we use a twist tie to keep everything nice and organized, and then we'll store these in 1-gallon Ziplocs. You could store a few of them in there, and then we're always using new rigs every time we go out. So it's a pretty simple rig setup. We like to crimp to the 3-ring, and then it enables us to really put whatever combination. Now, one of the things I wanted to show our viewers tonight, Jason, is how to rig a shad body with a 10/0 hook. So Jason brought a shed body and a 10-aught hook, and he's going to give you guys an idea on how to rig them. Make sure
so when you're rigging your shad with your 10-aught hook, you want to kind of put your hook on the top and see where it's going to come out. So you're going to go through the mouth of the shad. You come down to, you can't go too deep. If you go too deep on this, you're going to come out too early. You're going to feel the hook coming down through. You can see in here, I'm about 3/4 of the way through right now.
So you can kind of see the hook inside the bait. And because we want to go back further on the back of the bait, you know, there's a little bend in the bait, but don't worry about it. Just keep it center inside the bait. All right.
When you come through, you want to be, you know, most of the Mojos don't have fins on them like this. You want to be through, when you come through, you want the edge of your,
Here it is.
you want to be the edge of the hook, you want to, at the mouth of the shaft.
Right, and don't be afraid. This gap is good. This is, you know, giving you the ability, you're going to hook the fit. If you're too deep and there's a smaller amount of gap, there's sometimes the fish will bite onto it and it'll come right out. So don't be afraid to show some hook. Again, these fish are predators, and if they're hungry, they're going to go after these baits. Let's see what. So these are so again, being able to. I brought up just just a head in the package. So I mean, you guys can. We're experimenting with some different types of heads here, and you know, with the split ring, you could attach different backs. I mean, this has opened up a new hobby for us. Just testing different combinations and seeing what's working. And what works, we will write it down. You know, chartreuse and white, white, you know, all different varieties. Let's see. So I got a clip here of a Mojo in the water, just to give you guys an idea of what they look like. So hopefully this video comes through and you could see the action that the body, the hair, the skirt, and the shad body. I mean, look at this profile. Here's one in pink. And you could see a lot of different, you know, motion here. And again, you could experiment with different types of tails. You could have big grub tails, paddle tails. I mean, because we're fishing, we're fishing areas that have large bunker. We try to match it. If you're trying to match eels, you could do grubs or eel tails, you know, etc. So we're going to do a little Q&A in a couple of minutes, but one of the things I wanted to just let everybody know, if this isn't your first webinar, I'll be doing one a month for the next 3 months. Next month, we're going to be doing one on live bait fishing and cast net techniques. I'm going to hopefully break down being able to throw large cast nets. And then the one that we're doing in April is going to be on tournament fishing. This year we had a phenomenal year in tournaments, and we want to share some of our secrets with you. Not all of them, because we still need to win a few more. But another great thing about Navionics is that they give all these instructional free webinars. If you're a bass fisherman, freshwater, walleye, ice fishing, if you want to learn more about electronics, boat rigging, there's a webinar for you. They're free. They are recorded, so you can always use them as a reference, and it's a great thing. So just go to navionics.com, and on the bottom of the page, you'll have the webinar air. The thing is, Fin Chaser Charters, part of Kettle Creek Outfitters. We have charter boats in Staten Island. We do trips out of Manhattan, Atlantic Highlands, as well as Point Pleasant. Even if you have a boat and you just want a day on the water for instruction, we do that. Or if you're interested in chartering one of the captains. So questions. There is a question and answer where you're able to text it. If you got any questions, any feedback from Mojo use in landlocked lakes where large stripers are 10 to 15 pounds. Jerry, I'm not, we've never done it, but I can't see that it won't work. I mean, herring in those landlocked lakes, I would size down on the rigs, and I would, you know, experiment. The rig itself will work. You've just got to see what you're going to.
Have high pushing, so
right.
It's going to slow it down and make sure everything is going to run properly, but it's going to work just the same.
Right. So check your speeds. That's like Frank was just saying. Watch your sonar charts, especially in freshwater lakes. There's a lot of snags. So use your sonar charts and again, experiment. I bet you 3 ounce bucktail, 1 ounce bucktail, size down on your shad bodies, or because it's probably herring, alewives, you know, just downsize, see what bait those fish are on. But I know you could use it. I've sent a few of these Mojo rigs up to a friend that fishes in the upper Hudson, way north past West Point, and they're gonna start experimenting with these fish that are quasi in fresh water. Chris, is there a typical weight per depth you fish? Frank, maybe you can help us answer that.
Again, the shallower it is, the lighter you can go. You know, just understand. You have to understand. Where's the leader? Real quick. I'm not going to be too lengthy. You have to understand the anatomy of your leader. Okay. Physical Mojo itself, which is the head. Okay. This is the majority of your weight. That's going to go on the 5-foot piece. That's going to dictate how deep you are, and then your trailer does not always have to have weight. I want to stress that. That's where it allows you to become really. You can really just change it up and just try all kinds of different things. You can use. Let me see this darter. Okay. You can use a darter plug. All right. These don't dive. These just dart left and right. You can use this as your upper trailer, which is 15 foot back from the Mojo head itself. But again, the shallower the water, the less weight you can start with and get away with. Okay, and getting back to the tournament style of it, okay, we will run on one side of the boat that lighter weight, and it'll run back further. The closer weight will be heavier. That allows you to have more scope on the lighter one and straight down off the back of the boat with the other. So you can run more rods, and you can run more colors and different weights to figure out exactly what they want. I hope that answers your question.
All right, Chris. Also, is there a rule of thumb for weight of Mojos, like ounces to depth? It's again, you're looking at the current, this you know, your seas, the braid diameter. There's a lot of factors. I know when we troll wire with spoons and weight, you know, we know that if it's weightless and you're putting out for every 3 feet of wire, it goes down a foot. With the Mojos, a lot of times, if we're fishing the bottom, it's very simple. You get your trolling speed, you drop your bottom, the heavier Mojo hits the bottom, a couple of cranks up, and then you're at a starting point. So you're in the zone.
What you guys want to realize too is you have to be at trolling speed when you drop these down. If you drop your Mojos down, you're not at trolling speed, you're not going to be at the depth you want. Be at your 3 knots, you know, get your happy spot with your speed, and drop down, like Anthony said, drop down, you're going to hit bottom, crank it up twice, and you're about 3 feet off the bottom.
All right. Let's see. Frankie, can you get away with the medium heavy rod, or is heavy necessary? Well, again, we have a couple of different rods. So if we're, the more rods you put out, the more control you want. And also,
Tournament versus shorter.
right, if we're fishing tournaments, yeah, we could use medium, heavy, and you got to use a quality rod, because a lot of times you're overweighting the rods, and if you hit a snag or a good sized fish, you don't want to break the rod. But you could get away with the medium heavy rod. A fast tip is nice because you could really watch the tip move. Okay, so a faster action rod would work better, because that top section of the rod, the tip would be better.
And also, everyone should be aware that with the weights that we're dealing with here, once these fish strike, they're hooked. There is no setting the hook. There is no he's picking up and running with it. As soon as he hits it, he's hooked. So I just want to be clear on that.
So that's another advantage in tournament fishing is when we hook good sized fish with these, we're knowing that we have heavy mono, we have heavy braid, and we got a large hook. Let's see, Andrew, have you ever used a cedar plug as a trailer? Yeah, I mean, different varieties of cedar plugs, but some of them different colors. Painted holographic wrap on them. Yeah, it's very similar to this darter. You could pretty much experiment with a lot of different profiles. We just like using non-lip plugs, because then we know we can control multiple rods, and we're not worried about the plugs diving deeper or snagging. So we could control our rigs better when we're using, example, like you said, the cedar type plug, these darters, spoons, different type spoons. Mojo actually created, he's the leader of spoons. If you're wire trolling spoons, Tony Mojo, his spoons catch fish. He made a #1 spoon, a smaller spoon, just because Mojo guys are using them as a trailer. So experiment, colors, flash, different things. And again, sometimes just having a good old naked shed works well also. And also too, when you catch a fish on one and you catch a fish the second time on the same thing, you've got something working there. I mean, a lot of times we'll have 6 different things out. One plug, one side, one rig will catch fish, and we try to mimic it right away. We catch 2 fish on the same one, we'll make 2 or 3 that exact replica. Okay, hopefully we're back. All right, there we go. So hopefully we answered your questions. Let me just check one more time. Oh, all right. Okay, Jack. And again, guys, I'm sorry that the internet's been a little wacky tonight. What is the maximum depth you've caught fish? 125, 150 feet. Yeah, 125, 150 feet. Now, a lot of the times where we're fishing off New Jersey in our tournaments, that 3-mile line is 65, 70 feet in most areas. But a lot of times we've fished in the channels, and we've caught fish in very deep water. Yeah, the race, we fished the race in Connecticut, very deep water, use the same, those guys up there call it 3-way bucktailing. We call it mojo fishing. Same technique, deep water. And again, you mark fish in a suspended fish, it's easy to get down and target those fish. Do you use outrodders to get out more rods? Yeah. When we're fishing, sometimes we'll use the outrodders so that, because your outriggers a lot of times can't hold the heavy bucktail weights. Your clamps just won't hold it. The clips,
we'll run up to 6 rods when we use rod. When we use outrodders, we'll run up to 6 rods at one time with Mojos.
Yeah, just make sure safety lines, guys. Yeah. Put your safety clips on.
Tony Mojo sells a great set.
Yeah.
Safety line.
I keep plugging him, but yes, Mojo has great outrodders, rodder safety lines too. John, what is the link for the recorded webinar? You'll get an email and once it's the webinar is done, and it will be on the Navionics website, and you'll be able to, I mean, you could go back and get a lot of different, what do you call it, a lot of different webinars as well as this one. Charles.
Yeah, to answer Charles' question, when you have a bunker spoon or any large trailer on that 15-foot section, even though you're not in deep water, you're going to have to increase your Mojo weight just so everything is running through and stabilized. It's a great question because you have that much more resistance with that spoon swinging back and forth. You definitely need to increase your weight for that.
Okay. And what else was it?
Speed.
You gotta watch your speed on that as well.
Because it's your speed with the spoon is always, believe it or not, a much slower presentation. You control a little faster with just the Mojo. So when you have a spoon situation, you always have to slow it down.
Okay, so Thomas, where's the best place to purchase the Mojos, specifically 24 and 32 ounce? Because we kind of make a lot of our own rigs, and we use ours. There are other companies, Magic Tail, Mojos are very good Mojo rigs. His weight's up to
he's 32 ounce.
Up to 32 ounce. Tackle Direct, I know, sells them depending on where you're located. I think most shops now in New Jersey have climbed aboard the Mojo rig stocking. If you go to any of the trade shows now, I know Somerset has a great saltwater show. They're in most shops. Even West Marine's got them in there. So
he has a very good question there. And each question is, do you use downriggers? To answer your question, Pete, that's the beauty of the Mojo. You don't necessarily need the downrigger because that's what the Mojo is doing. It is the downrigger ball the size of the head. So you're totally alleviating a piece of equipment from the boat. And again, you use that heavier head right out of the rod holder, boom, you're right on the bottom, maybe 50 feet, 100 feet behind the boat, maybe. And then you can go with your lighter rod just behind that with a lighter Mojo head. It'll scope out further. So you don't need to use the downriggers. That's a beautiful thing.
yeah,
Absolutely beautiful.
and for example, like this head right here is 36 inches, 36 ounces. I mean, and you could get into most depths with this with no problem. And again, not having to mess around with another piece of equipment.
Yep.
But great question.
We'll fish up to 75 feet of water with a 36 ounce.
36. Now, and keep notes. I mean, if you guys are really going to start getting into some Mojo fishing, keep some notes. Like, hey, I used a 36, ounce in 75 feet of water. We were trolling 3 knots. This was my trailer. And if you catch fish, then that's what you got to mark down. So again, experiment with these. Again, every year we're adding new things. We're trying new techniques out. We're using different weight lines.
Again, with the Mojos, shallow water for